Hello and welcome back to the Survival Horror Guide, a show where we play and then review survival horror games. We rate them on their fear factor, and we give them an overall score. Finally, we send it over to the series' totally arbitrary rating system to see how it stacks up against the rest of the survival horror competition. Classic survival horror is back, baby! Today we're taking a look at the Chilean-developed survival horror game, Tormented Souls. This game had a decent amount of hype and word of mouth around it in the lead up to its release in 2021. A true survival horror game with tank controls, semi-fixed camera angles, puzzles, and limited resources, with tons of homage to classic survival horror games. For me, I definitely felt the influence from Resident Evil Remake, which is awesome. Not a bad game to take cues from. The game starts off with our protagonist, Caroline Walker, as she receives a letter in the mail containing a photograph of these twin girls. She feels drawn to them and begins having strange nightmares, so she decides to investigate the place from where the letter was sent, which brings her to the Wildberger Hospital, where the entire game takes place. And shit, the game takes place in my neck of the woods here in Canada. Campbell River hits close to home, so that was kind of neat to see. And as expected, once Caroline arrives at Wildberger Hospital, things aren't quite right, and it escalates real quick, with Caroline losing her eye in the first few minutes of the game. And as I took control of the character, solved the puzzle to make it out of the bathroom Caroline is locked in, and started exploring the halls of the old mansion turned hospital, I gotta say, I was thoroughly impressed with the game's environments. The visuals here are absolutely top-notch. The rooms feel lived in, they feel unique from each other. The lighting is awesome, the ambience and atmosphere are creepy. In this regard, they absolutely nailed it. Despite it being an indie game from a small team, they're definitely punching above their weight class. Though there's definitely some disparity between the environments and the character models, particularly some characters' faces. They don't come close to the quality of the environments, and there's some scenes where you have a character that looks almost out of place. It clashes, and it's super noticeable. They definitely paid lots of attention and detail, though, to animating the way Caroline's skirt bounces. Because, priorities. They spent all of their budget animating her skirt. The game has familiar survival horror style combat. No running and gunning here. Caroline will be equipped with a few basic weapons, and I guess she's some sort of engineer because she's able to craft makeshift firearms from pipes and other materials she finds, like this pipe shotgun, like she's a raider from Fallout or something. The combat, it's nothing to write home about, but it's satisfying and fares better than a lot of other games in the genre. The enemies you encounter are mutated former patients of the hospital who have been experimented on and are all kinds of messed up. And the story, learning about what happened, why these people are like this, why Caroline is linked to the hospital, it's engaging, it's super interesting, I was into it. And although the game's main mystery on how Caroline is linked to the hospital, it's super easy to predict within the first hour of the game, but the way the actual ending unfolds was freaking awesome. And I'm talking about the true ending, the good ending. I ended up replaying the last hour or so to get the proper ending, and was really impressed with the creative way in which you accomplish it. It required thinking outside of the box. It didn't take the player's hand and guide you in the right direction. It really relied on the player to figure it out, and I absolutely loved it. The puzzles in general in this game are no slouch. Some things here are super challenging. The game assumes that you're not a complete moron. So naturally I had to look up a couple solutions. Some I feel were a bit over-designed, but largely I thought the puzzles in this game were fantastic. Lighting also plays an important role in the game. Spend too long in the dark, and you'll just die. Narratively, I don't think this is ever really explained as to why this happens, but it does make for some clever design in certain sections. It is sometimes used as a way to lock off certain rooms or hallways until you're able to illuminate the area. Early on, it can be a bit of a nuisance, where you have nothing but a lighter to keep yourself out of the darkness, But if you encounter an enemy, you need to manually equip your weapon, which you gotta do by opening the menu. I do wish there was a quick swap or something because it does become a bit tedious, but it's later alleviated by a clip-on flashlight. Later in the game, you'll also encounter an enemy that's unkillable and of course, will randomly spawn in certain parts of the hospital and chase you around. And she's terrifying. But the first few encounters, yeah, she's super scary. After that, kind of annoying, and you can kind of game the system in a way because as you enter a room, there is an audio cue that will signal the player that she's in that room, that she's there. So what you can do is you can actually just turn around, go back, and then come back into the room because it is random. So being able to game the system like that, it kind of relinquishes the horror and the tension, and then it kind of just becomes an obstacle. It kind of just becomes an annoyance. Instead of it being scary and forcing me to strategically avoid her as intended, it turns into just leaving the room and coming back until she's not there. There's a few details like that, little things that set the game back just a tiny bit. The voice acting is truly terrible.
Recording my progress might be useful if anything happens to me.
And you gotta think that it's, also playing homage to classic survival horror games where bad voice acting is almost a staple of the genre.
Wow, what a mansion!
And it's probably done in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of making something intentionally bad.
Oh my, what is this doing in my soup?
And I'm pretty sure Caroline here is doing her best Canadian accent.
What? I'm sorry.
On the fear factor scale, this game is an 8.5. Some of the enemies are terrifying, the ambience and atmosphere are masterfully done, and the hospital/mansion setting is a perfect, creepy-ass backdrop. Overall, this game's an 8. You can tell this team absolutely loves survival horror, and they did a great job here. It really does feel like the best tank control-styled survival horror game of this sort in years. Tons of homage, but also new ideas, with some minor presentation issues holding it back a bit, as well as some minor gripes in gameplay. Overall, really good though. The high point for me was definitely reaching that big brain true ending that had me thoroughly impressed. Now taking it over to the series' totally arbitrary rating system, this game is coming in hot at rank number 7. Hell, even beating out some classic games. But it's well deserved, and if you're a fan of survival horror, you ought to check it out. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Survival Horror Guide. As always, please let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if you guys have any game recommendations, things you'd like to see covered on the series in the future. Thanks again for watching this one, guys. Peace.